Well, hi, I'm Mike Bash. You're not here to listen to me speak. We're here to talk about IOCP today, and we've all had our connections with IOCP, whether it's we've volunteered there, whether we've donated clothes for Retail Select, whether we've picked up Thanksgiving baskets in the back and bought turkeys for IOCP. It's been around for 48 years. We've had this opportunity to be involved. But today we have the chance to talk with Kevin Ward, who's the Executive Director of IOCP, and really hear a little bit more in depth about what IOCP is and what it's doing with us and our neighbors here in our community. So a quick introduction of Kevin. Kevin has been the Executive Director of IOCP since 2020. And Kevin's background is business, ministry, nonprofits. Phenomenal background. I have had the opportunity to get to know Kevin in the last year. I've been had the privilege of being on the IOCP board, and I've gotten to know Kevin a little bit better. You were in for a great time this morning. Just Kevin is a phenomenal speaker. So this is going to be really great. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let Kevin talk through some stuff. I've got a couple questions to ask him, and then we'll give you a chance to ask questions of Kevin at the end. Kevin, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you, Mike. It's been a delight having Mike on our board of directors over this last year, and I see some very familiar faces that almost feel like full-time employees. Hi, Mr. Ritchie. At ILCP, because they constantly show up, and it's crucial to our business model. I'm just delighted to be here. I thoroughly enjoyed the worship service this morning, and that story about the woman at the well just really resonated, because I think about a lot of our clients who show up to Interfaith. We sometimes represent that well, and that is a need, and coming for whether it's food, water, shelter, those types of things. And so, and I do think we're very fortunate as a community to have an organization like Interfaith. And what's powerful about it is it's neighbors taking care of neighbors. It stays in the community. And that, if I could duplicate that across the nation and every community as a way to come together. And so just delighted. I've got a brief presentation here that we'll go through. Feel free to ask me any question. Pretty open and transparent, and if I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know, and we'll get the answer. But I wanted to just start by grounding us. So when you think about, okay, it's a little bit out of order, but that's okay. So we started in 1979, incorporated in downtown Wayzata, and I'm sure many of you may remember that building that's been torn down, and now it's townhomes there that's operated and managed by ODC, the Outreach Development Corporation, which I think is going to come in a few weeks to the Linton service and talk about your partnership and the work you're doing in affordable housing. But we service 8 cities, from Plymouth all the way up to Minnetonka Beach. And when you think about who is it that we actually serve? Like, Kevin, who's showing up? Well, if you look at this, we've had about 5,300 people that we served in FY25. 43% of those families had children, 49% adults, and then about 8% what we would consider senior citizens, 65 plus. And that 5,300 breaks down into households. So a household could be between 3 and 4 on average, people in a household. And most of the majority of them, about 73%, live in Plymouth, and of that 59 with children. About half of those returned from FY24. 40% are employed, either full-time, part-time, or does some seasonal work, or they're self-employed. And then 35% have degrees or certificates that go beyond high school, and 24% are individuals. And sometimes when I present this, people are surprised at the number of people and the educational level of those who come to Interfaith Outreach. So here's kind of how our services break down, okay? Our mission is to strengthen our community by meeting basic needs and equipping individuals and families for ongoing stability. The two words that I said in that mission is basic need and stability. That's in our mission, okay? So we took the mission and designed the programs to support that mission. So when you think about basic needs, it's food, clothing, and information. Look at the 1,100 folks, households that came for food, and about 337 for clothing. And then that information is 639. When I say information, one of the things I think that we're able to provide, especially when someone is in a crisis or in a need, have a need, it's the right information at the right time. Who do you need to go to talk to? It may not be us. We get calls, you may not be eligible, you may have some that we don't fit within our services, but we have relationships and partnerships that we can refer someone, get them to where they need to be. And sometimes, look at the number, it's over 600 people that we just needed to give them the right information, and it didn't cost us anything. So that information is critical when you think about basic need. And then on the right side is the stability. So these are more of the longer term, where we have individual family supports, housing, transportation, employment, early childhood, and community connection. And that community connection goes back to, I think it's important because during the service, they talked about the empty nesters group. That's about connection, and that isolation is real. And so having those types of programs are important. We try to help community members connect in the community, whether it's referral to a faith community, whether it's getting different services that we may not offer. That connection is critical. And then those are just some of the numbers in the families and how that breaks down in the stability. So you have basic need and you have stability, and those are the services. So what tends to happen? What is driving people to interfaith outreach? And we talk about this as it's basically a math problem. And when you don't have enough income, and another way that I say it is when you have more month than you do money. So that means that money won't make it to the end of the month. And these are just some of the ways in which it shows up for a family. And what we're seeing is we're seeing families who haven't historically even come to us, that they are middle class, working hard, inflation, things are going up, but their income isn't keeping up. And then, bam, something happens that now causes them to need some support when they historically haven't needed support. And sometimes they don't have the family support or their parents or a brother or sister or cousin or someone they can go to, because it could happen to anyone, and get a little support. So they come to us as that support system. And we help them kind of navigate through whatever they're challenged with. So when you think about our approach, basic need and stability. So 697 households are currently in the basic needs, and then you have 175 households that are in the stability services that we're offering. And then that both is we have people that are in both. And I'll give you an example of a story of that. But we just wanted to show you how sometimes that works. And that stability is more long-term. We're trying to get you to independence where you don't need interfaith outreach anymore. That's what those stability services are designed to do, is get families to independence. So the growing need, and the need is growing. So when you think about basic need, we're up 38% in households in food alone, and 16 in clothing requests, that's resale. So I talked about how we're in basic needs and stability. Most of the growth we're experiencing is in basic needs. So that tells me, or that tells us as an indicator, is people can't afford life. And that's what's driving it. And then when you look at overall the number of households, we're up 22%. And this is based off of the third quarter. We're up 25%. We just haven't published that data yet, but we're up 25% so far. So the end of our fiscal year is at the end of March, and I'm pretty sure we'll probably end at 25-26%. Some of you may say, well, Kevin, what's the average growth of interfaith year over year? It's like 2 to 3%. Last year, from 24 to 25, it was the most we had ever seen, and that was 5%. So you tell me, how do you go from 5% to 25%? As my 15-year-old son would say, that math doesn't math. It's not sustainable. So I'll kind of bring this together for you with a story about Julia, who came to us, single mom, had gone through a divorce, and she was struggling hard to just meet the basic needs. She had a job. She wasn't making as much as she needed to make on that job. She needed childcare. Things were just very, very tough and difficult for Julia and her daughter. And so they came to Interfaith, and we started working with them. And the first thing we did is we looked at food, clothing. So that's the basic need, right? Most of you know us by the food shelf or by resale, right? That's what Interfaith is kind of known for. Well, as I was preparing for this, I had a conversation with Mike, and he challenged me, and he said, hey, why don't you talk about the things that maybe everyone doesn't know that Interfaith does? A lot of our work is hidden. You don't see it. You do not see it. Give you an example. Early childhood resources. So this is a lot of the CFK, Caring for Kids, where we provide scholarships for families so they can take their kid to daycare. And did you know we have 9 local partners, childcare providers? We call them QPN, Quality Network Providers. And they have agreed to a high standard of service delivery, so that we know that when a child gets really sound, consistent, early engagement in education, it sets them up for a life of learning. So a lot of our pioneer folks kind of develop that, but we do a lot in that area. Not only that, we work with the teachers, we support them, and we also work with the families. We have counselors and psychologists and therapists that works on that parent-child relationship because that's the most important connection that a child could have. We do that work in early childhood. Julia was able to get her daughter in one of the centers that we work with locally, one of our QPNs. The next one is financial emergency assist. A lot of times, again, if there's something that happened, a utility bill, go to the hospital, flat tire, for whatever you were out of work for a few weeks because of surgery and you can't pay rent, we have a whole department of financial folks that help someone go through looking at their budget. We look at statements, we look at historically what they've spent, and we determine that if we're going to help you, like for rent, if we're going to help you pay this month's rent, you have to prove that you can afford that ongoing. So we see that you have enough money to cover the rent and your living expenses. It's just life threw you a curveball and you need some help this time. But if we help you, there's a high degree that we know you'll be okay in the future. If we look and we say it's not affordable, we don't want you continuously coming back, then we look at maybe you need to go to our employment services and see how you can increase your income. What training, what education can we get you so that you can actually increase your income? And sometimes it's maybe you need to move. Maybe the place that you're living in is no longer affordable because the rent has skyrocketed. So let's look for a less expensive option, and sometimes that option is not in our community. And so we support that. We've had a number of people successfully transition out to an area where it's way more affordable. So that's just an idea. So when you think about the financial assist, we were able to help Julia for a period of time with her rent. And then I mentioned employment service. We have a whole team that their job is to help people find jobs and get the resources they need to earn more income. They're using AI to help them create their resume. They're doing searches. We have access to searches that are not online, relationships. We have employment partners with businesses in our community where we can get folks connected on the employment side, employment coaching, counseling. You don't see that. We have volunteers that come and help people prep for interviews, which is critical for them increasing their income. So that's employment services. On-site staff. Did you know in 9 of housing communities within our service area, we have staff member on site with office space that works in the community. The 10th one would be Melrose, Medina. That's a new project we're working on. That will be the 10th one. And when you look across those 9 represent about 920 different units that we support across our portfolio of communities that we're in. What are they doing in the community? It is an on-site IOCP that if you live in that community and you have an issue, you need some resources, you need support, you don't necessarily have to come to Interfaith. You can work with your on-site team. And that on-site team consists of the neighborhood program, where we work with youth. We also work with the families, getting them connected. We work with the property manager, the owners, bringing in resources. We also have support services. So that's the model of ODC and IOCP. We provide on-site services for those who may be homeless, those who may be working and have some other addiction things that they need support with. We are physically there in that community, building relationships, working with those families and those kids. You will never see that because it's hidden, it's embedded in our community. That's when we talk about housing communities. And then the other one is case management and mental health services. So we partner with Washburn Children, Relate Counseling, Metro Behavioral Health, the Center for Transformation. These are people that provide counseling. They provide therapy for families and kids who are struggling. Give you an example. At one of the communities where we have our neighborhood program, the teens in that area were having some challenges. So what did we do? We had 2 coaches come in from Washburn Children. They came on site and they worked for 90 days, 1 day a week, bringing those kids together and teaching them how to be in the community, working through some of the challenges, building relationships, building community. And it has shifted that whole experience for those teens as well as for those living in that community. But that's bringing resources there. So that's an example of case management and mental health services helping people figure it out. We are embedded, we're partners. But a lot of times you don't see that because it's hidden. And when we do that, we have community impact. What is the outcome of that? You have children that are ready for kindergarten and ready to get started. You have stable neighborhoods. You have stronger workforce, connected communities, and economic vitality. That's what Julia was able to experience as she's going to be graduating next spring with a nursing degree. And already you can just see the difference in the quality of her life and how she's showing up. And another way that I'll explain this, and then I'll open it up for some questions. How many of you are familiar with, there's this little tiny, I don't even think anyone knows about it, but there's this little tiny hospital in Rochester called the Mayo Clinic. So the Mayo Clinic has this amazing patient-centered care model. And that is they put the patient at the center, and then they surround that patient with all the expertise to work together to help that patient heal or recover from whatever they're working through. So it could be, the general doctor, the surgeon, the heart doctor, the cancer specialist, whoever, they're all working together, managing that person's case so they can recover. Well, we do the same thing when you put Julia in the center and you have childcare. Childcare is working with employment services. Employment services is working with the food shelf to make sure they have food. Food shelf is working with resale to make sure that there's clothing. Clothing is making sure that they have. Transportation is another one. And so we're all working together to get that person what they need when they need it so they can go on and be sustainable. Does that make sense? Different model, but it's a good way to think about our services and how they work together. And then we'll come back to this, but that's just kind of a very top level of just who we are, how our programs and services work together. The other thing I'd say is I really appreciated Mike challenging about the hidden parts of our work, because it also reminded me that poverty in the western suburbs is hidden sometimes, well, all the time. And I've gotten the question, why would you start an organization like IOCP in Wayzata? Why? There's no need, right? They wouldn't have started it if it wasn't a need. And so the need is here. It's continuing to grow, but it's oftentimes hidden, or it's concentrated into certain areas. And although you may not see everything that we do, know that we are a powerful organization provided for by the community, working on behalf of the community to make sure families can be successful in our community, all families. So with that, Mike, did I miss anything? Yeah. So I'm gonna come back to this after we answer some questions.
Well, I'm going to ask one question, and then we'll let you guys ask some questions. Kevin, we can't turn on the news today without reading about ICE. Tell us, in our western suburb community, how has ICE affected what's going on at IOCP?
Yeah. So I've been doing this, I've been going to a number of our faith communities having this type of conversation. It has had an impact in our community, and it's had an impact on Interfaith. We have seen a significant drop in the families that have safety concerns of actually showing up to our building. And some of the ways that we've been able to be creative around that is by delivery. We've always been doing deliveries, but we're starting to do more deliveries to people who have safety concerns. Proxy shopping. So if you don't feel comfortable coming to the food shelf, you can identify someone to come to our food shelf or resale to shop on your behalf. The other thing, we're working closely with the schools and other partners. The thing that we're seeing now is utility and rent requests, because some of these families, because of safety concerns, haven't gone to work and still have rent to pay. And so we're trying to navigate and work through that as well. And Interfaith as an organization during this time, we are focused on our mission and our values. And we are doing what we were created to do. And I haven't made any external statements simply because it's important for us to maintain that focus on our mission and not create undue attention because we want to try to avoid that. And so we're able to still deliver our mission, which is what we're put here to do. And we're doing it in a way that honors our values. And so it has had impact. And staff has really been challenged because they're working directly with families. And so they're doing things like safety plans. So if mom or dad doesn't come home and no one knows what's happened, there's a safety plan for the kids of what's going to happen with the kids. And so that's the work we're doing, but it has had impact in our community and on our organization.
Kevin, as you look at basic needs all the way through to stability, I meet with Wendy every month, and she indicated this last time we met that you are in the process of hiring a new wealth management, which is at the other end of the spectrum from basic needs. Could you say a couple of words about what that consists of?
Yeah, so Wendy Geving is our program director, and she does an amazing job, but she runs all our programs. We had done some client surveys, and one of the things that kept coming up was debt and financial acumen. And so as our response to that, basic needs, stability, and wealth building. And when I say wealth building, it's probably not the wealth building that you may be thinking. When we think about wealth building, we're thinking, how can we help them understand the snowball debt effect? That if you can take one debt and begin to just pay that consistently, and then you get that debt paid off, and then you can take that to the next debt. It is education and information on the debt side, but also opportunity for people to, did you know that the average family that we serve, if they had $1,000 saved, most of the time if something happens, they would not have to come to us. They could take care of that on their own. They become their own IOCP. So if that bill was a little higher, oh, I've got some money I can take and pay that. Or if the tire pops, I can get that fixed and I don't have to go to Interfaith. That is beginning to build the wealth, and the wealth of knowledge of how money works is what we're thinking about on the wealth building side. And we'd love for people to get to a point where they can have, I'm just throwing this out there because we're still working on building this out. Let's say a family worked hard and they was able to save $500. Could we match them $500? Now you've got $1,000. I don't know, but that's the idea, so they don't need us ongoing. And here's the thing, most people want to be able to take care of their own business. Nobody wants to come to us, because if you're coming to us, it's a reminder to you that something in your life probably isn't working the way that you want it to work. And so how do we reduce that and give the dignity back to the people to be able to handle their own business and their own lives? Yeah.
Another question. There we go. Question? Okay. Jill?
I know that transportation is one of the things you listed, and I know that's something that you've been looking at. Can you just tell us, that's a barrier for people if they don't have transportation to get to jobs, to get their kids to school, et cetera. What thoughts do you have related to transportation and supporting clients?
Yeah, so transportation, as you know, out here is a challenge, and it has been a challenge. And so a couple things that we've done is we know that most people want the independence of having their own transportation. So we do help with car purchases. That's part of what we do. But one of the other things that we're doing is we're looking at specifically on the food shelf mobile delivery. We're exploring that now, and that's a little different. So remember I talked about those 9 housing communities we're in? We're trying to figure out that if we had a refrigerated truck and we could take that on site to those communities and set up maybe once a week and allow those families to shop right there in our space, that would cut down on the need for transportation. It creates accessibility. So that's one area we're looking at of how do we really try to come up with creative ways of combating transportation challenges. The other thing is we're always in contact with state, city, metro mobility. We're always looking for ways in which, how's there shared transportation. Sometimes with the medical community, we're looking at ride shares that could happen. But it is a challenge in our community. And I would love to get to the point where we had a robust metro transportation locally, or, somebody said we should, Interfaith should have a car lot. So if anybody has any ideas on that, let us know, but transportation continues to be a challenge.
I want to thank you for your presentation, but I also feel like I need to apologize. You're an old friend. Your agency is an old friend to this church. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people didn't show up simply because we are old friends, and we have a fairly, at least at the top level, understanding and really support you. I think as a community, we really support you. Great information.
Thank you.
Love to see how the deep details, but like I said, a little bit of apology for Trinity because we really do love you.
Yeah. I appreciate that, but I also know, to that point, that we feel that support, and I would rather feel that support than show up and this place is full and don't fill it, right? And I remember, I think somewhere in the Bible, it says that where 2 or 3 are gathered. And so that's all we need. What other questions?
Just a quick one. Do you have more than one brick and mortar location?
So our main building is on 101 and 6th. That's our main building. That's the only brick and mortar that we have and that we own. The other housing we used to own, but we no longer own because of ODC, the Outreach Development Corporation. So that's like our sister organization where, and just to give you a little background, a number of years ago, the housing program was actually just a program within IOCP called Housing. And when, in 2011, when they moved from downtown Wayzata out to Plymouth, and they started to build those townhomes on the old lot, the story has it that there was a volunteer in the back on a bobcat, and the bobcat was about to flip over. And we had it didn't flip, but one of the other guys there was an attorney. And he said, you know, we probably should separate this from the work that IOCP does. It's just a little different. And so because they deal with the physical buildings, we separate it. So that's ODC, and they own a number of affordable units throughout the community. But IOCP, we just have our one brick and mortar location.
Kevin, are there people that never leave IOCP that in spite of the stability services just never leave?
There are some people that have been with us for a number of years. And a lot of times that is a fixed income, disability, or something that will not allow them to be able to increase their income. And we support them. But the goal is to those who are able to continue to evolve, we want to help them be sustainable, and knowing that there will be a percentage that will always need support because they can't increase their income. It's a very small percentage.
Okay.
Just really quick, just so people know, the congregation, so part of our capital campaign, part of it was being designated towards the outreach component towards Salem, and another part was towards Melrose Commons that Kevin mentioned related to ODC, which is a new housing unit that's, I think, maybe breaking ground this spring.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
With hopefully occupancy by fall of 2027. So it is in Medina, right over the border of Maple Plain. It's north of Holiday on 19. So it's a 50-unit complex. I know that there's, I forget the breakdown exactly, but 1 to 4 bedroom units. And so part of what we are going to be contributing towards is not the actual physical building, but a playground. There was a component that they hope to have for families. So anyway, just know that that's another component we're going to be supporting.
All right, Kevin, if there are any more questions, I want to make sure you have time to make the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, some of you may ask, how can I get involved? What can we do? It's volunteering, the food shelf, the resale. We're always looking for volunteers. You can always donate food, clothing, come and shop at Resale. Resale is an amazing story. They're gonna do about $750,000 this year in revenue. and 100% of that goes back to the programs. And so it's another way of helping the mission, is by donating and shopping and supporting there. You can always donate and help us fundraise, friend raise on the awareness piece. And when I say awareness, sometimes you may have something that you're passionate about. It may be housing, it may be food insecurity. We have such great partners who do advocacy, and we can share that with you. If you want to go and show up and advocate and create awareness, we support that as well. And I'll kind of end on this. I count it a privilege to have the opportunity to serve this organization and this community. I don't take it lightly. I feel a call to be here. And Interfaith is the place where Scripture jumps off the pages to make manifest and become a living condition in the lives of people who need it most in our community. And I can't think of a more rewarding thing to do than to make that Scripture come to life. And we could not do it without the support of the community. Because when you think about our funding source, majority of our funding comes from individuals. We don't get a lot of federal, state, or city funding. It is the community saying we're going to take care of our own. And so thank you for that. We're always, open. If you have questions or want more information, we're there. And thank you for being a partner.